If I died tomorrow, I don't think anyone would notice. That's what a woman I had never met told me in a Chicago bar. She said it so casually that, for a second, I didn't know whether she was joking. She wasn't. I don't usually talk to strangers. Actually, I don't usually talk to anyone. After COVID, I somehow lost the ability to socialize. I stopped going out. I stopped calling people. Eventually, being alone became normal. That night, I went to a bar by myself. I ordered a beer and sat quietly. A woman around 50 was sitting a few seats away. She looked tired, but not in the way someone looks after a long day. It looked deeper than that. She eventually turned toward me. "Do you mind if I talk to you?" I said. "Sure," she smiled. "I'm Margaret." And that's how it started. No flirting, no awkward small talk. She just wanted someone to listen. Within a few minutes, she was telling me about her husband, David. He cheated on me. She said it like she'd repeated those words 1,000 times. Then she laughed. The funny part is, he didn't even make enough money to be worth cheating. I didn't know whether to laugh. She did. Then her expression changed. I waited until my kids went to college before I left him. She told me she had stayed for years because she didn't want her children growing up between two broken homes. Eventually, she divorced David. She earned more money than he did, so she didn't get the financial victory she thought she deserved. But she said the money wasn't what hurt. What hurts, she told me, is realizing how many years I spent waiting for my real life to begin. I asked her what she meant. She looked down at her drink. I thought I'd be happy after the kids grew up, then after the divorce, then after I became successful. But every time I reached the thing I was waiting for, there was nothing there. She went quiet. Then she looked at me. If you're young, don't make the mistake I made. Don't spend your whole life waiting for someday. And I remember thinking, I had only known this woman for 20 minutes, yet somehow she was telling me things people usually tell their closest friends. Margaret started talking about her career. She had worked her way up for years. Eventually, she became a partner. Everyone around her considered that a huge achievement. But Margaret didn't look proud when she talked about it. She looked tired. "Chicago is strange," she said. "You can make good money and still feel like you're falling behind." She told me about working late, missing weekends, always feeling like she needed to accomplish more. Then she said something I'll probably remember for a long time. No one tells you how exhausting success can become. I asked her why she didn't move somewhere quieter. She laughed. I tried. The suburbs are boring. Chicago is exhausting. So I guess I'm stuck between two places I don't want. She took a sip. Then she started talking about travel. She said she'd traveled to different cities, hoping she'd find somewhere that felt different. But everywhere has the same big chain stores, same restaurants, same coffee shops. After a while, you realize you're not really looking for a new city. You're looking for a new feeling. I asked her what feeling she wanted. She thought for a few seconds. Home. That was all she said. Then she told me something even more personal. Her biggest regret wasn't David. It wasn't her career. It wasn't even getting older. It was never finding out what I actually liked. She had spent years being a wife, then a mother, then an employee, then a partner. But somewhere along the way, she had forgotten to become Margaret. I don't know what I would have done if nobody needed anything from me, she smiled sadly. Maybe I would have painted. Maybe I would have traveled. Maybe I would have done something completely stupid. Then she looked at me. That's what I regret. I was so busy being useful. I never figured out who I was. For some reason, that sentence hit me, because I realized I'd been doing something similar, not living for other people, just hiding from life. The conversation got darker after that. Margaret started talking about getting older. She said nobody prepares you for the loneliness. People think loneliness means having nobody around. It's not. Sometimes you can be surrounded by hundreds of people and still feel completely alone. She told me her children didn't call as much anymore. She wasn't angry at them. That almost made it worse. They have their own lives. I know. They're busy. I know. They love me. I know. Then she paused. I just wish they needed me sometimes. She looked at her phone. No new messages. She put it back in her purse. Then she started talking about relationships. Men don't really want women like me anymore. I told her I didn't think that was true. She smiled. You don't have to make me feel better. I'm just telling you how it feels. She said she sometimes wondered whether men only wanted women for physical reasons. Nobody asks what I think. Nobody asks what I've learned. Nobody asks what I want. She looked toward the people around us. Everyone wants something. Very few people actually want to know you. Then she told me she had been trying to find God, but I can't make myself believe. She said she'd tried. She'd read things. She'd prayed, but nothing clicked. I wish I could believe there's something after this, because if there isn't, she stopped. I didn't ask her to continue. She didn't need to. A few minutes later, she quietly said, I drink wine at night so I can sleep. Then she looked embarrassed. That's probably not something I should tell a stranger, I said. Maybe you just needed someone who wouldn't judge you. She looked at me, and for the first time that night, she didn't say anything. I tried to change the subject. I asked her about restaurants. She immediately started talking about travel again. It was almost funny. She had an opinion about everything: cities, food, marriage, careers, religion, men, women, getting old. But underneath all those opinions, I could hear the same thing. She was lonely. At one point, I tried to buy the next round. She immediately shook her head. No, I'll get it. I told her it was fine. She said, save your money. Then she ordered 2 cocktails anyway. My treat. I laughed. She smiled. See? You listen. That's all I wanted tonight. We sat quietly for a while. Then she asked me a question. What are you going to do with your life? I didn't have an answer. She laughed. That's okay. Most people don't. Then she became serious. Take chances. Make mistakes. Try things you're afraid of. Find something you love before you get trapped in a life you don't. She wasn't saying marriage was bad. She was talking about losing yourself. She told me that when she was young, she thought love meant sacrificing everything. Now she wasn't sure. Don't become someone's wife or husband before you know who you are. Otherwise, one day you wake up and you don't recognize yourself. I asked her if she still wanted love. She looked at me. For a few seconds, she didn't answer. Then she asked me the same question. Do you want love? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I honestly didn't know. Margaret nodded slowly. Yeah, I understand. Then we both became quiet. No music seemed loud enough to break that silence. No conversation seemed important anymore. For the first time that night, I realized we weren't 2 strangers having a conversation. We were two people quietly admitting we didn't know where our lives were going. Margaret eventually checked the time. She looked surprised. "I should go." She slowly stood up. I thought she would simply say goodbye and leave, but instead, she looked at me and said, "Thank you." I looked at her. "For what?" "For listening." I smiled a little. I told her it was nothing, but she slowly shook her head. "It isn't nothing. You'd be surprised how rare it is." There was something about the way she said that made me stop smiling. She wasn't trying to be dramatic. She genuinely meant it. Then she put on her coat. She adjusted her scarf. And just before leaving, she looked back at me. "Don't waste your life." I smiled. "I'll try." She immediately shook her head. "No," she pointed at me. "Don't try. Do it." Then she walked out. Just like that. No dramatic goodbye. No phone numbers. No promise to meet again. Nothing. Just a stranger disappearing into a cold Chicago night. I stayed there for another 10 minutes. I didn't even know why. I just sat there, thinking about everything she had said. One sentence kept coming back to me, again and again. I was so busy being useful, I never figured out who I was. That sentence stayed with me. When I finally left the bar, the city was still alive. People were laughing. Cars were passing. Couples were walking together. Friends were standing outside restaurants, talking and laughing. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere. Everyone seemed to have someone. And then I thought about Margaret. She had a successful career. She had children. She had money. She had spent decades building a life. From the outside, she had everything. Yet that night, she had walked into a bar alone, not because she wanted a drink, not because she wanted to meet someone, but simply because she couldn't stand eating dinner alone at home. That thought hit me harder than I expected, and for the first time, I started wondering something. How many people around me were doing the exact same thing? How many older people had families who loved them, but nobody who actually sat down and listened? How many people were waiting for one phone call, one visit, one simple question? "How are you really doing?" I didn't have an answer. But that night, something changed in the way I looked at loneliness. I realized loneliness doesn't always look the way we imagine it. It isn't always crying. Sometimes it looks like a successful woman sitting alone at a bar. Sometimes it looks like a father staring at his phone, waiting for it to ring. Sometimes it looks like someone laughing louder than everyone else, just to hide how quiet they feel inside. And sometimes it doesn't look like loneliness at all. Sometimes it looks like me. I never saw Margaret again for a while. I actually went back to that bar on Friday nights. Part of me expected to see her sitting in the same place. Silver hair, that quiet smile, a drink sitting in front of her. But she never came back. Eventually, but I stopped going. But I never forgot her. A few weeks after that night, I called my mother. We talked longer than usual. Nothing special happened. We talked about normal things, food, the weather, family, little things that usually don't seem important. But before we ended the call, she said, "Thank you for calling." I didn't know what to say. I just sat there for a moment, thinking about those words, and I realized something. Maybe Margaret had been right. We spend so much time assuming people will always be there that we forget they're getting older too. Their lives are moving too. Their children are growing up. Their friends are disappearing. And one day, There might not be another chance. Since that night, I've started talking to strangers more, not because I'm suddenly social. I'm still not. But if an older person starts talking to me, I listen. If someone looks like they want to say something, I don't immediately look at my phone. I stay. And if someone tells me they're lonely, I don't tell them to cheer up. I don't give them some meaningless advice. I just stay. Because Margaret taught me something. Sometimes you can't fix someone's loneliness. You can't repair their marriage. You can't bring back their youth. You can't give them back the years they've lost. But you can give them 10 minutes. You can listen. You can make them feel heard. You can remind them that they're still visible, that they're still interesting, that their story isn't over. And maybe that's what we got wrong. Maybe the question isn't, why is everyone so lonely? Maybe the real question is, why are we so afraid to talk to each other? I still don't know what happened to Margaret. I don't know if she found God. I don't know if she ever found love again. I don't know if her children started calling more. But I hope they did. I really hope they did. I hope someone eventually sat across from her, looked into her eyes, and simply asked, "What do you want?" Not what she could provide, not what she could earn, not what she could sacrifice, just, "What do you want?" Because sometimes the person who looks like they have everything together is secretly waiting for someone to notice that they're struggling. And sometimes all they need is a stranger who is willing to stay for one more conversation. That night, Margaret wasn't asking me to save her. She wasn't asking me to solve her life. She was only asking me to listen. And maybe that's something we can all do.